rises and falls. And as you exhale, as you let that breath out, at the end of each exhalation, before you breathe in again, just allow yourself to rest for a moment in that stillness, in that spaciousness. After you exhale and you sink deeper and deeper, just allow yourself to rest for a moment and experience that state of fullness within emptiness. The breath is empty, you fully exhale. And allow yourself to sink for a moment into the experience of fullness. Which is the self. Sink into that source of fullness within the self. Don't think about it like a breath hold. It's not pranayama, it's not a breathing exercise. It's just simply allowing yourself, for as long as you very easily and very comfortably can, to just rest in the stillness after the exhalation, before you take the next in-breath, and just rest in that spaciousness of the source of the self. And the moment the body wants to inhale again, gently take in the inhalation. Don't try to do a breath hold. It's just a taste, it's just a glimpse of an experience of that borderless, boundaryless, boundless and ceaseless aspect of the self. Slowly and gently bring the palms of your hands together at chest level in Namaste. And gently rub the palms of your hands against each other. Press the palms of your hands into your closed eyes. Open the eyes and lower the hands. Welcome to Satsang. So wonderful to be together with you all again. I know it was only 4 days that I was out, but it felt far too long. It was a beautiful conference, a beautiful summit, but I'm so happy to be back, and I'm so happy to be back with you all. We'll start, as always, with one of our questions that comes in from our global audience joining us on the internet, online. And then we'll open it up to any questions that any of you have. So just have your questions ready, and after we take the first one, we'll open it up. How do I approach a situation where I have to take action that is going to hurt someone else? This was asked by Karen on Instagram. How do I approach a situation where I have to take action that's going to hurt someone else? Very carefully, obviously. We want to be really sure if we know that what we're going to do is going to hurt someone. We need to be really, really sure about how and why it needs to be done. Now, one reason it may need to be done is actually for that person's highest gain. You see this, for example, in situations with parents or loved ones who have a child or have a loved one who maybe has gotten addicted to drugs. And they engage in something called tough love, meaning maybe they've tried everything to get this person to stop using drugs, to try to help him or her, and nothing works. So maybe they decide on some tough love, meaning no, we won't give you any more money. No, we won't keep supporting a lifestyle that is ultimately killing you. Or, no, you can't live under our house anymore while you are abusing substances. Or whatever decision they may make. They know it's going to be difficult, but they make it because they deeply believe that it is in the best interest of that person. And so it's always hard. But sometimes we have to do that. You know, think about the role of surgeons, right? Everyone who shows up to them, you know, without fail, 100%, 10 hours after surgery, when the anesthesia wears off, every single person who comes before you is going to be in pain. Every one of the people who comes before you is going to need pain medicine after their anesthesia wears off. I mean, that's kind of a tough situation to be in, right? All day long, everyone who leaves you needs pain medicine. And yet, what they know is whether it's a few days later or a few weeks or a few months later, that person is actually going to be in much better shape than they were before they came in. Whether it was a tumor that was removed or a bone that was set or whatever it was. Yes, the operation has caused pain, and yet give it some time and the person actually is better off. So that's one type of these sorts of situations. And if that's the case, then really all you have to do is hold the greater, highest good in your mind and in your heart at all times, and obviously do whatever you can to make it as hurt as less as possible in the moment, but stay anchored and grounded in knowing that really what you're doing is for their highest good. The other situation is when we have to do it for our own higher good. Maybe we need to end a relationship. Maybe there's someone we're in relationship with who is just absolutely toxic to us, and no matter what we've tried to do, no matter how we've tried to change the situation, it cannot be changed, or that other person is totally unwilling to change. And so we have to take a step for our own highest dharma, our own highest good. And in that situation, what you need to remember is that you are just as worthy of love and compassion as anyone else. A lot of times when we're on spiritual paths, we commit ourselves to paths of love, paths of compassion. But we think that that means that we should somehow suppress ourselves in order to be compassionate to someone else. That somehow we should put down our needs in order to give love to someone else. And the truth is really clear, it's a cliche, and yet it's actually true. You can't give real love, deep love, to another person if you don't know how to love yourself. And you can't really bring compassion into the world unless you're able to be compassionate with yourself. And so in that second situation, we hold on to the truth that we are here on earth deserving of all of the love and all of the compassion, and that we need to first give it to ourselves in order to be able to give it to anyone else. And that we've been evolutionarily designed to be able to protect ourselves. And this isn't just true of humans. I mean, this is true of mosquitoes. This is true of ants. This is true of plants. Every bit of creation is created with the ability to, and the instinct to, protect itself against predators. And so whether it's the stench of a skunk, whether it's the sharp, sharp needles of a porcupine, whether it's, the ferocity of a lion, or whether it's the sting of an ant, or the sting of a bee, or the bite of a mosquito. Everything in nature is built with an instinct to protect itself and the ability to do so. Because ultimately, we can't achieve what we are here to achieve on any level, including our highest, deepest spiritual awareness and growth, if we can't protect ourselves. If we can't stay alive and healthy and safe long enough to attain enlightenment, then we're not going to attain it. But that's not only physical safety and health, that's also emotional, it's also spiritual. And so if we are in situations that are a threat to our physical safety, our physical wellness, our emotional wellness, our spiritual wellness, sure, in the beginning, we try to change the situation. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. But ultimately, when we come to the awareness that the situation cannot be changed, well, then we realize I'm the one who has to change. I have to get myself out of this situation. And if that's the case, again, we approach it really in the same way, which is, this is for the highest good. My highest good, but also ultimately for that other person's. Because no one is here on earth just to prevent someone else from having to go through their karmic journey. And if you keep suppressing or repressing your highest truth in order that someone else should not have to face their own demons or face their own ego or face their own illusion or ignorance or whatever it may be, neither are you helping yourself nor are you helping them. And so in both cases, we just stay anchored and grounded in the highest truth, the highest love for ourself, our lowercase s self, this individual self that's dealing with this difficult situation, but also our capital S self, that true self that we are moving toward, opening to, unfolding to, and that we can't do it or we can't do it easily in some situations. But you stay anchored in love and anchored in truth. Any questions here that anyone has? Yes. Yeah, samne bhi. It's on.
You spoke to self-love, and Arti Swamiji spoke of peace and having to be at peace. But how do you learn to love yourself so that you can be in peace?
Beautiful. Self-love. How do we actually do it? Well, we speak about two different selves. And they're obviously not different, they interweave, but for the sake of discussion, it's helpful to think of it in two ways. One is what I call the lowercase s self. That's this individual body, this individual incarnation, this you that's right here, and it's got a size and a shape and a history and a brain with its own patterns of thought and whatnot. And to love that self is really an exercise in compassion. You've been through a lot. You're doing the best you can. Every minute, every moment, every day, you are trying the very best you can to rise to that occasion. You're trying to meet every minute, every moment with love, with peace. And you've been through a lot, and this isn't just you, this is all of us. We've been through a lot. We've been hurt. We've been betrayed. We've been cheated, lied to, abused, whatever our story may be. But we all have reasons to believe that this self is somehow damaged, not quite right, not good enough. And it may also just be the really ferocious, relentless, and insidious powers of marketing and advertising that really are so relentless that they just won't rest until we hate ourselves so much we have to buy whatever they want to sell us. But eventually, whether we buy their items or not, we do end up feeling like we are lacking in some fundamental way. And that's true even if we haven't also experienced in our lives some kind of betrayal or hurt or abandonment or disloyalty or abuse. But it's very, very rare to find someone who hasn't suffered some of that in some way at some time in their lives, whether from loved ones, family members, friends, business partners, people they thought they could trust. And so we've got all of these reasons to feel like we are somehow defective, not good enough. There's shame, there's guilt, there's insecurity, there's not enoughness. And so the solution to that is really just to draw upon your most compassionate self, to speak to that wounded self. And it may sound really contrived, and you may even kind of think, oh my God, really? Like I could never do that. I know that was how I felt the first time that I did this exercise, but it's really powerful. You speak, and you can do it verbally, or you can do it, I know people who do it writing. Either way, whatever works for you. But literally speak to that self. You're doing your best. You're trying to show up. Yes, you've been hurt. And nonetheless, look at you. Look at how you keep rising to the occasion. Look how you keep trying every day. And just have that compassion, that understanding, that love that you would have if someone else came up to you and said, God, listen to how I'm struggling. Listen to what I'm going through. Listen to what an awful person I am. Listen to why I hate myself so much. And you'd say, oh no, sweetheart, come on, you are wonderful. No matter what they did, you'd understand, right? You'd give them a big hug. You'd say, no, come on, it's okay, you're wonderful. The reason you did that is because you had been hurt. The reason you did that is because you were afraid. The reason you did that is because you felt badly about yourself. But hey, come on. So use that voice. And again, it may sound contrived. It's okay. Nobody's watching. You don't have to post about it on social media. You don't have to tell anybody you've done it. You don't have to report back to me. Let it feel as contrived as it may feel, but do it. And then the other aspect, and they're both important, is the other way into self-love is through the capital S self, which says, regardless of the way that this individual body looks, acts, what she's been through, what she's done, what has been done to her, regardless of her abilities or skills or anger or lust or greed or jealousy or illusion or the fact that she hit the snooze button today when, the alarm went off and she was supposed to meditate, but she hit it anyway and, slept till noon. Regardless of any of that, ultimately I'm spirit. I'm soul. I'm not the one who, fill in the blank. That's not actually even who I am. That's just a role that I'm playing for a split second, a millionth of a split second in the amount of time that this has been going on. There's a beautiful teaching that I've heard from several different people, from several different wisdom traditions, but basically what it says is, imagine that there's a mountain, and imagine that the mountain is a mile high, a mile wide, and once every 100 years, a bird with a silk scarf in its beak flies across that mountain, and it just passes its silk scarf over that mile-high, mile-wide mountain. Once every 100 years. The amount of time that it takes that mountain to erode from that silk scarf is how long most of us have been in this cycle of birth and death, this wheel of samsara, as we say. So yeah, this particular swipe of the cloth, I'm in this body, this story, this role, these obstacles. But that's not who I am. I'm one with the divine. Ultimately, who I am is spirit, it's soul, it's divinity, it's infinity. And so love of that capital S self is love of God. And it's love of the fact that I've been created not just by, but of the divine. And to not love the capital S self is essentially to defile the Creator. It's essentially to insult the divine, as though somehow this were a stain upon the divine. Which A, is sacrilege, but B, is really kind of self-absorbed. Like, I am the stain on the divine. Like, everything else is perfect and divine, but I am so important that I over here am the one who is the stain on the perfection of the divine. Right? I mean, it's a little bit absurdly self-absorbed. If God is perfect, in the ultimate highest aspect of that perfection, not in the way that the creation is conducting itself, but in the perfection of the universe itself. To say that I am something less is really to put myself at the center of the universe. And so you can also just kind of, whenever that arises, have a little chuckle with yourself about, oh, really? Oh, really, me? Little old me, the stain, the blemish in the center of the universe. And so it allows you to just kind of let that go and realize, well, if spirit, if source, if soul, if the divine is perfect, well, then so is my capital S self. And so you anchor in that rather than in the particular role that you may be playing in this infinitesimally, something like that, short intersection of time and space. And you anchor and you love that true self. It's like that line that Pujya Swamiji leads us in when we sing in the Arti, Sabse Unchi Prem Sagai. And it means the highest form of love is love for the divine. But that's also us. It's love for our capital S self. Self-love is not, oh yeah, everything I do is perfect. Self-love is my highest truth, is an embodiment of, a reflection of the perfection of the universe. Beautiful. Other questions? Yes.
Namaste, Sadhviji.
Namaste.
This is a question from one of your statements that I read, where in your early years you had spoken to Pujya Swamiji and you'd said, I didn't know that when my ego gets annihilated, it takes my
Heart with it, yes.
Very intriguing. Could you talk about it?
Sure. So she's quoting from a line that I shared in my memoir, my autobiography, Hollywood to the Himalayas. My story of coming here and 27 years ago and all that's happened. And there's a scene in the beginning in which I was struggling. Ego, ignorance. And, you know, on a spiritual path, a lot of times you'll hear people talk about the annihilation of the ego. That in order to grow spiritually, you have to annihilate the ego. That what the guru does is the guru annihilates the ego, frees you of the ego. And I said to Pujya Swamiji one day with tears pouring down my eyes in the middle of some drama that I was going through, I said, no one ever told me that when you annihilated my ego, my heart was going to go with it. And that's what she's asked about. We think, in theory, ego annihilation sounds great. Oh yeah, then I'll be free. I'll be free of ignorance and ego and all this stuff, and won't that be great? And what we don't realize is how much of our self-identification, the way we identify ourselves, is actually ego. We think the ego is just that kind of little bit of us that causes us, trouble when we want to not be in trouble. And we don't realize how much of our identification, how much of our understanding of ourself and the universe, our role in the universe, how much of our understanding of what we need, what's important, is actually all ego. And so when you think, for example, that the right way for people to treat you is X, or that the right way for things to happen is Y, or that who you are is Z, the corest of who you are is Z. And suddenly you realize none of that is true. It's not easy. It takes not your deep heart, not the spiritual heart, but a lot of us mistake, and I did in this particular statement, a lot of us mistake our deep spiritual, intuitive, sacred heart with the emotional part of our mind-brain. And what I really meant when I said that was, no one told me that you were going to take the emotional part of my mind-brain with my ego. It wasn't that my spiritual, intuitive, deep, sacred heart was injured. It was that the emotional center of my brain that most of us think of as the heart. When we say, should I listen to my head or my heart? I always say, actually, they're both your head. It's actually just two aspects of your mind. But that which we identify as heart, that emotional aspect of the mind, what I want, how I want it, how it should be, what feels nice, what I like, what makes me feel good, what I think is truth. And a lot of that, most of that, is actually ego. It's all this created, curated identity. And so when we do find ourselves in a spiritual situation where through the guru, through the fire of the guru, the fire of intense practice, the fire of grace, that burns, it burns. I've spoken about being a disciple sometimes as feeling like a piece of clay that I was just a kind of amorphous piece of clay that had lots of potential, but that just wasn't formed yet, and got stuck on a wheel that my guru essentially spun around, and every once in a while, gave it a big slap on the side, not literally, but metaphorically. And then when I thought I had taken all of the metaphoric slaps that anyone could take, you get thrown in the fire. Right? Anybody who's ever done ceramics knows after you pull it off a wheel, it goes where? It goes in the kiln, where it gets burned. And only when it comes out of the kiln do you actually have something that's not just beautiful but useful. But along the way, it's a process of being spun and hit and burned. And, as far as gurus go, Pujya Swamiji is about as gentle and tender and loving and maternal in that nourishing and nurturing as they get. So it's not that the guru is doing it, it's going back to what I was saying, like a surgeon. I mean, if I've got a tumor and it's going to kill me, well, the surgeon wouldn't be a good surgeon if they didn't remove it just because I screamed and yelled and said that it hurt. They'd say, yeah, you'll get over it, have a pain medicine or, whatever it is, but got to do the surgery. And that's ultimately what the spiritual path does, is it's a kind of psychic surgery that literally removes from our psyche that which is blocking us from the truth. But it doesn't feel, people think, it's just going to feel, like a bubble bath. There are days that feel like the best bubble bath in the world. And then there are days that feel like you're in the kiln being burned. And that was one of those days. But I am beyond infinitely grateful for it, because every one of those pieces that was burned out of me or cut out of me or slapped out of me was something that was blocking me from me. It was something that was blocking me from being able to see. So it was compassionate surgery, but that doesn't necessarily make it easier while it's happening. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah. Kurbadi, yeah.
Hi. My question is, self-love is amazing, but sometimes you love some person, you both have same kind of ego and attitude, and you're not talking to each other because you both have same kind of, but you miss that person at that moment also. So what to do at that time?
Great. So you have someone you love, but you both are stuck in ego, and you have the same type of ego, and now you have a fight, and you're not talking to each other. What to do? Apologize. I mean, what's the shortest distance between 2 points? A straight line. If I'm here and you're there, what's the shortest distance? A straight line. Come to you, apologize. If you're really good friends, you may not actually even need to apologize. You may be able to just go up and give a smile and a hug and sort of have it taken care of anyway. If whatever the fight wasn't such a big deal. But if you've actually said something that really hurt somebody, especially if it's happened before, I mean, sometimes we have these fights that are just stupid, that just literally, you fight over nothing. You can't even remember what you're fighting over, but it becomes just your egos. In those cases, don't even go back and discuss what it was. Just Hare Chordo and apologize and give a hug and move on. But in a case where you've actually done something that has hurt someone, you need to actually show them just simply, I'm sorry, isn't enough. You need to really show them that you know what you've done is wrong, and what steps are you taking to make sure that you don't do it again. So if you were overcome by anger, and that's why you did it, well, have you enrolled yourself in some kind of an anger management program? And if not, why? Because then it means you're just as likely to do it again. If you did it because you were drunk, are you going into rehab? Have you committed to stop drinking? And if not, then you're still not safe. Because the minute you drink, you'll do it again. Did you do it because you were stressed out and you just lost yourself? Well, okay, then are you going into a stress management program? Are you starting meditation? Are you going to do something that makes me actually have some reason to believe that you're going to act differently in the future? And if not, then that apology doesn't actually carry any weight. Then what it just means is, I don't want you to be angry at me. You should let it go and give me a get out of jail free card. But a real apology, if you really want to make it better, figure out why you made a mess in the first place. And what can you do to make sure that doesn't happen again? And show that person how much they mean to you and what steps you are actually taking to correct that in yourself. If it was something serious. Again, otherwise just apologize and move on. Beautiful. And by the way, lastly, we always think the one who apologizes feels like, oh, if I apologize, they're going to think I'm very weak. But the one who apologizes is always the stronger one. Because it's always the one who's got the clarity to know, I'd rather be in peace than be right. I'd rather be in love than be right. At the end of the day, you don't get any points for being right. Your happiness points come from being in peace and being in love, not being right. So the one who recognizes that is actually the wise one, the smart one, the strong one. Beautiful. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. We'll take your question first tomorrow, okay? Tomorrow you'll be the first question. Have a beautiful evening, and I look so forward to seeing you all tomorrow. I will now, by God's grace, be here without traveling for quite some time. So we'll be able to have regular satsang again. Have a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful night.